The interview lasted exactly 7 minutes. I stood in the marble foyer of the Crawford estate, my resume clutched in hands that refused to stop trembling, and wondered what kind of desperate I'd become. The kind that answers classified ads for live-in positions, with strict confidentiality required, and salary numbers that made my student loans look like pocket change. The kind that ignores every red flag, because rent is 3 weeks overdue, and my car made a sound this morning that definitely meant expensive. The man who conducted my interview wasn't Liam Crawford himself. That would come later, in a way I couldn't have anticipated. Instead, I faced Marcus Chen, head of household operations, whose crisp suit and assessing gaze made me feel like I was being screened for the CIA rather than a nanny position. "Miss Hayes," he said, reviewing my credentials with the kind of thoroughness that suggested he already knew everything about me down to my third-grade report cards. "Your references are impressive. 5 years with the Morrison family, specialization in behavioral support, certification in crisis intervention. You've worked with children on the spectrum before." 3 of my previous clients were autistic, I confirmed, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. The Morrison family had moved to Singapore 6 months ago, and despite my qualifications, finding new placement had proven harder than I'd expected. Families wanted someone younger, prettier, more willing to overlook boundary violations. I was 28, practical, and had opinions about things like consistent bedtimes and limiting screen exposure. Apparently, that made me difficult. Marcus set down my resume. "I'll be direct, Miss Hayes. This position requires discretion above all else. Mr. Crawford values his privacy intensely. You'll be expected to sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. You will not discuss the family, the household, or anything you observe here with anyone. Ever. Violation results in immediate termination and legal action. Do you understand?" "I understand confidentiality is important in private employment," I replied carefully. "But I need to know what I'm agreeing to. What exactly would I be unable to discuss?" Something that might have been approval flickered in Marcus's eyes. "Good. You ask questions. That's preferable to blind compliance." He gestured toward the window overlooking grounds that seemed to stretch forever. "Mr. Crawford is a private businessman with extensive interests in imports, real estate, and various ventures that require a certain profile. He prefers to keep his personal life separate from his professional one. His daughter Lyra is 6 years old. She was diagnosed with autism at age 3. She's nonverbal, though she understands language. She experiences significant sensory sensitivities and requires routine, consistency, and someone who won't panic during a meltdown. I'd worked with nonverbal children before, knew the difference between can't speak and won't speak, between having nothing to say and having no way to say it. What does her typical day look like currently? Currently, she has no caregiver, Marcus admitted. The previous nanny left rather abruptly 2 weeks ago. Since then, Mr. Crawford has been managing as best he can with assistance from household staff. But none of us have your training. Lyra's routines have been disrupted, and she's struggling. Something in his tone made me look up sharply. Why did the previous nanny leave? That's between her and Mr. Crawford, Marcus said, his voice cooling slightly. What I can tell you is that she wasn't dismissed for any ethical violations and left with a generous severance. Some people simply can't handle the demands of this household. Red flag number 1. But the salary he'd mentioned on the phone, plus room and board in what was clearly a mansion, plus benefits that included health insurance I desperately needed, made me swallow my hesitation. "I'd like to meet Lyra before making any commitments," I said, "and Mr. Crawford if possible." "Mr. Crawford is currently unavailable. He travels frequently for business. However, I'm authorized to show you Lyra's suite and introduce you if you're comfortable proceeding." Unavailable. Right. The kind of businessman who was too busy for an interview with his daughter's potential caregiver, but could afford a home that probably had its own zip code. Every instinct screamed warning, but my bank account whispered desperation. Let's meet Lyra, I decided. We climbed a staircase that belonged in a palace. All dark wood and portraits of stern-faced people who looked like they'd never smiled in their lives. The second floor was quieter than the first, the thick carpeting absorbing sound. Marcus led me down a hallway past closed doors until we reached one with a small painted sign, Lyra's room. He knocked softly, a courtesy I appreciated before opening the door. The room beyond was beautiful in a careful, controlled way. Soft gray walls, blackout curtains drawn against the afternoon sun, minimal furniture arranged with obvious attention to space and flow, a sensory corner with a crash pad and weighted blankets, a visual schedule on the wall showing daily routines with pictures, noise-canceling headphones on a low shelf, everything organized, everything thoughtful, everything designed to make the world manageable for a child it had never been designed to accommodate. And in the corner, sitting cross-legged with her back to us, was Lyra Crawford. She was small for 6, with dark hair pulled into a practical braid and wearing soft clothes with all the tags clearly removed. She rocked slightly, a self-soothing motion, her hands moving through a complex pattern I recognized as stimming. On the floor around her were wooden blocks arranged in an elaborate symmetrical pattern that must have taken hours. "Lyra," Marcus said softly. "Someone's here to meet you." She didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge us at all. But her rocking increased slightly, her hands moving faster. I stepped forward slowly, making sure my footsteps were audible, telegraphing my presence. I didn't speak yet, didn't try to force interaction. Instead, I knelt several feet away from her, close enough to be in her awareness but far enough to not invade her space, and simply observed. The block pattern was mathematical, precise, beautiful in its complexity. I noticed she'd used only blocks of specific colors, arranged in a gradient from darkest to lightest. "That's an amazing pattern," I said quietly, not expecting a response. "The symmetry is perfect, and I like how you organized the colors." Her hands stilled. The rocking slowed. She didn't turn, didn't speak, but something in her posture shifted. Attention, maybe. Awareness. I stayed still, giving her time to process my presence, my voice, the disruption to her space. Slowly, so slowly I almost missed it, she reached for another block, added it to the pattern. The placement was deliberate, precise, clearly an invitation if I knew how to read it. I did. Carefully, I moved slightly closer, still not in her immediate space, and picked up a block that matched her color sequence. I held it up where she could see it in her peripheral vision, showing my intention, then placed it in the only spot that would maintain her pattern's symmetry. For the first time, Lyra turned her head. Her eyes were gray, a shade I'd see echoed in her father's face later, and deeply serious. She studied me with an intensity that felt like being X-rayed, taking in every detail. My expression, my body language, my distance, my placement of the block. Then she reached for another block and held it out to me. Not a full greeting, not acceptance, but a beginning, a willingness to see if I could understand her language. We built together in silence for several minutes, Marcus watching from the doorway. The pattern grew more complex, her rules becoming clearer. Specific colors in specific positions. No blocks touching the seams in the floorboards. Everything perfectly aligned. When the pattern reached the boundary she'd clearly set for it, she sat back, her hands resuming their earlier movement. "Thank you for letting me help with your pattern," I said softly. "It's one of the most beautiful things I've seen." She didn't respond verbally, but she didn't move away from me either. Marcus cleared his throat softly. "Miss Hayes, if you could step outside for a moment." I rose slowly, gave Lyra space, and followed him into the hallway. "She doesn't do that," he said, and there was something like relief in his voice. "With anyone. The previous nanny tried for 3 weeks, and Lyra never allowed her within 10 feet. You've been here 5 minutes. She's assessing whether I'm safe, I explained, testing if I can follow her rules and respect her space. Building blocks has structure, predictability. It's a low-risk way to establish whether someone understands how she communicates. Can you start today? The question caught me off guard. Today? I'll have your contract prepared within the hour. Your room is 2 doors down from Lyra's. You'll have your own bathroom, sitting area, complete privacy. Salary is as discussed, paid monthly, with a signing bonus. All meals provided, plus a monthly allowance for any special supplies or equipment you determine Lyra needs. Mr. Crawford reviews all household matters, but you'll have significant autonomy in Lyra's care. It was too fast, too easy. Too much money for a position that was just childcare, however specialized. But Lyra was already back to her blocks, and something about her careful solitude made my chest tight. How long had she been without proper support? How many well-meaning but clueless people had tried to force her into their version of normal? I'll need to collect my things from my apartment, I said, and I wanted in writing that I have final say on Lyra's daily routine and therapeutic approaches, subject only to Mr. Crawford's approval on major decisions. Done. Marcus pulled out his phone. I'll have a car take you. Be back by 6. Lyra's dinner is at 6:30, and routine is essential. 3 hours later, I stood in a bedroom that was larger than my entire studio apartment had been, unpacking the 2 suitcases that contained my entire life, and wondered what I'd just agreed to. The room was beautiful, decorated in soft creams and blues with furniture that looked antique and probably cost more than my annual salary. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked gardens that seemed to go on forever. A bathroom with a soaking tub and shower large enough for 3 people. A sitting area with a fireplace that actually worked. It was too much. All of it was too much. But when I'd returned, Lyra had been sitting outside her room, clearly waiting. She'd stood when she saw me, made direct eye contact for half a second, and then retreated into her room, leaving the door slightly ajar. An invitation. Now, as 6:30 approached, I reviewed the schedule Marcus had provided. Dinner was precise. Same time every day, same routine. Lyra ate in her room at a small table by the window. Limited foods, textures carefully managed. No surprises. I knocked softly on her door, the same courtesy Marcus had shown. No answer, but I heard movement inside. Lyra, it's Charlotte. I'm bringing dinner. I entered with the tray Marcus had prepared, exactly as specified. Pasta with butter, no sauce. Sliced strawberries, no stems. Crackers, specific brand. Water in a cup with a lid, no ice. She was sitting at her table, hands folded in her lap, rocking slightly. I set the tray down carefully, making no sudden movements. Your dinner is here, same as always. Would you like me to stay, or would you prefer to eat alone? She didn't answer, but she picked up her fork. I started to leave, giving her privacy, when she made a sound. Soft, brief, almost questioning. I turned back. She was looking at me, one hand making a gesture I almost missed, a wave toward the other chair. You want me to stay? Her eyes dropped, but she nodded, just once. I sat in the other chair, far enough to not crowd her, close enough to be present, and simply existed in her space while she ate. I didn't try to force conversation or interaction. I just sat, offering the same companionable silence she seemed to need. This was the work, I realized, not forcing progress or pushing boundaries. Just being consistently, quietly present until she decided I was safe enough to trust. Halfway through her meal, Lyra reached for her communication board, a laminated sheet with pictures and words. She pointed to one image. Book. Would you like me to read to you? She nodded. The small victory felt enormous. It was nearly 8 when I finally returned to my room, emotionally exhausted, but certain I'd made the right choice. Lyra had let me read 3 books, sitting close enough that our shoulders almost touched, her small hand occasionally reaching out to turn pages at exactly the right moment. She'd even smiled once, quickly, when I'd done a silly voice for one of the characters. I was collapsing onto the beautiful bed, already planning tomorrow's routine, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Marcus Chen here. Mr. Crawford will return tomorrow evening. He'll want to meet you then. Be prepared for questions. He takes Lyra's care seriously." I stared at the message, anxiety crawling up my spine. Tomorrow, I'd meet the man who'd built this gilded cage, the father who was apparently too busy with business to interview his daughter's caregiver himself, the person who'd created all these rules and routines, but couldn't be bothered to be here when they fell apart. I'd worked for wealthy, absent fathers before, men who treated their children like possessions to be managed rather than people to be known, men who threw money at problems and expected someone else to fix them. But something about this felt different. The careful attention to Lyra's needs, the sensory-friendly room, the precise schedules designed around her comfort rather than adult convenience, the household that operated like a well-oiled machine, all in service of one little girl's stability. Whoever Liam Crawford was, whatever business kept him away, he understood something fundamental. Lyra needed structure because the world was overwhelming, not because she was broken. That realization should have comforted me. Instead, it made me nervous, because a man who understood his daughter that well, but still couldn't be here for her, was either running from something he couldn't face or hiding something he didn't want her to see. Either way, I had a feeling tomorrow's meeting would reveal exactly which kind of father Liam Crawford was, and whether I'd made a terrible mistake by accepting this position. Liam Crawford arrived at exactly 7:43 the next evening. I know the precise time, because I'd been checking my watch obsessively since 6, anxiety making it impossible to focus on anything else. Lyra and I had spent the day establishing routines, exploring the grounds during her scheduled outdoor time, and working through her visual schedule with a predictability that seemed to calm her. But as evening approached, her stimming increased. Her rocking became more pronounced, and she kept glancing toward the front windows. She knew he was coming. And despite everything Marcus had said about Mr. Crawford's frequent absences, Lyra was waiting for her father. I heard him before I saw him. The low rumble of an expensive car pulling up the drive, car doors closing with precision, and then Marcus's voice in the foyer below, speaking in tones too low for me to distinguish words. I was in Lyra's room, helping her sort her block collection by color and size, when footsteps approached down the hallway. Measured, deliberate. The footsteps of someone who never hurried because the world waited for him. The knock on Lyra's door was soft, respectful, exactly like Marcus's had been. But there was a pause after it, a beat of hesitation that spoke of uncertainty. "Lyra, sweetheart, I'm home," a deep voice said through the door. "May I come in?" Lyra's hand stilled mid-sort. She looked toward the door, then at me, her gray eyes wide and assessing. Then she stood, walked to the door, and opened it herself. The man standing in the hallway made my breath catch. Liam Crawford was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled the doorway in a way that should have felt threatening, but somehow didn't. Dark hair touched with silver at the temples, styled back in a way that emphasized sharp cheekbones and a strong jaw. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my car had, charcoal gray with a crisp white shirt open at the collar. And when his eyes met Lyra's, they softened in a way that transformed his entire face. Those eyes were the same shade as his daughter's, gray like storm clouds, but warmer now as he looked at her. "Hey, little love," he said softly, crouching down to her level without entering her space. "I missed you." Lyra studied him for a moment, her expression serious. Then she stepped forward and pressed her forehead against his shoulder. Not a hug, exactly. No arms involved, no prolonged contact. Just this brief moment of connection, forehead to shoulder. that lasted maybe 3 seconds before she stepped back. But the way Liam Crawford's eyes closed during those 3 seconds, the way his hand came up to hover near her hair without quite touching it, the way he breathed in like he was memorizing her, told me everything I needed to know. This man loved his daughter desperately. "Thank you for letting me say hello," he murmured to her. "I'll let you get back to your sorting. I can see you've been very busy today." Lyra nodded once, then turned and walked back to her blocks, resuming her sorting as if there'd been no interruption. But I noticed she'd positioned herself where she could still see him in her peripheral vision. Liam stood slowly, his attention finally shifting to me, and the softness vanished from his expression like a door slamming shut. Standing face to face with him, I understood why Marcus had been so insistent about discretion. This wasn't just wealth. This was power. The kind that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew. The kind that made grown men nervous and smart people cautious. His gaze traveled over me with the same assessing intensity his daughter had shown, cataloging details with professional thoroughness. My practical clothes, my lack of jewelry, my steady eye contact that I refused to drop despite the instinct screaming at me to look away. "Miss Hayes," he said, his voice low and controlled. "We should talk. My office. Now." It wasn't a request. "Lyra's bedtime routine starts in 30 minutes, I replied, keeping my voice calm. "I need to be here for it. We can talk after she's settled." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, that I'd contradicted him. "Marcus can handle her routine for one evening. Lyra and I have spent today establishing trust and consistency. Disrupting that on my second night sends the wrong message about reliability. Whatever you need to discuss can wait 45 minutes. The air in the hallway went very still. Liam Crawford wasn't accustomed to being told to wait, and every line of his body communicated that clearly. But he glanced past me to where Lyra was sorting blocks with intense focus, her small body rocking slightly, and something in his expression shifted. 45 minutes, he agreed. My office. Don't be late. He left without another word, and I released a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. From her corner, Lyra made a soft sound, almost like a laugh. I looked at her, surprised, and found her watching me with what might have been approval in her eyes. "Your dad's intense, huh?" I said quietly. She nodded, solemn, then returned to her blocks. But her rocking had slowed, and her hands moved with less agitation than before. Message received. Standing up to Liam Crawford had somehow earned me points with his daughter. 45 minutes later, after I'd helped Lyra through her bedtime routine with the same careful consistency we'd established the night before, I knocked on the door Marcus directed me to. A massive oak door at the end of the first-floor hallway, the kind that belonged on a castle. "Come in." The office beyond was exactly what I expected. Dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk that looked like it weighed more than my car. But it was the details that caught my attention. Framed photos on one shelf showing Lyra at different ages, always serious, never smiling at the camera. A child's drawing pinned carefully to a corkboard behind the desk, abstract shapes in careful patterns. A small wooden block on his desk, painted in rainbow colors, positioned like a paperweight. Liam Crawford stood by the window, his back to me, silhouetted against the darkness outside. He'd removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and there was a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. "Sit," he said without turning. I remained standing. "I prefer not to." He turned then, eyebrow raised. "You make a habit of contradicting employers?" "I make a habit of maintaining professional boundaries. You're not interrogating a suspect, Mr. Crawford. You're meeting your daughter's caregiver. There's a difference." For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then, unexpectedly, his mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You lasted 3 minutes before calling me out. The previous nanny made it to day 4. I'm not the previous nanny. No. He moved to his desk, set down his glass, and gestured to the chairs across from him. Please. Sit. I'm asking, not commanding. I sat, noting the subtle shift in his demeanor. Still controlled, still powerful, but less aggressive. Marcus gave me a preliminary report, Liam said, settling into his own chair. He said Lyra responded to you immediately. That's unusual for her. She responded to my approach, not to me personally, I corrected. I respected her space, followed her rules, and communicated in ways she could understand. Most people try to force autistic children to interact on neurotypical terms. That doesn't work. I'm aware. Something dark passed through his eyes. I've watched too many well-meaning people traumatize my daughter by trying to fix her. She doesn't need fixing. She needs understanding. Which is why I'm paying you an exorbitant salary to provide it. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with that same intense focus. But I need to know if you're going to run at the first difficulty. Lyra's had too much instability. She needs consistency. Someone who won't abandon her when things get hard. What happened with the previous nanny? His jaw tightened. She broke the rules. What rules? The rules of this household, the rules that keep Lyra safe and stable. He stood, pacing to the window again, tension visible in every line of his body. We don't celebrate holidays here, Miss Hayes. No Christmas decorations, no music, no festivities of any kind during December. I blinked, processing that. Because of sensory overload? Because December killed my wife. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and final. I should have stayed quiet, should have nodded and accepted this obvious boundary. But something about the rigid control in his voice, the way he held himself like he was bracing for impact, made me push. Lyra's mother died in December. The night Lyra was born. His voice was flat, emotionless, but his knuckles were white where he gripped the window frame. Christmas Eve. My wife went into premature labor. There were complications. She hemorrhaged. The doctors couldn't stop it. She lived long enough to hold Lyra once, to tell me to take care of our baby, and then she was gone. I'm sorry, I said quietly. That's devastating. It's history, but it's why we don't do holidays in this house. Why December is observed like any other month. Lyra doesn't need the chaos and overstimulation of Christmas anyway. The rule works for everyone. I heard what he wasn't saying. December wasn't banned because of Lyra's needs. It was banned because Liam Crawford couldn't face celebrating anything during the month that took his wife from him. The previous nanny, I said carefully. She wanted to do Christmas activities with Lyra. She thought she could fix our grief with forced cheer and decorated trees. His voice turned cold. She was wrong. What if Lyra wants to participate in holiday activities? She doesn't. She's never expressed interest because she's never been exposed to them. How would she know what she's missing? He turned to face me fully, and the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Are you suggesting I'm depriving my daughter? I'm suggesting that making decisions based on your grief, rather than her needs, isn't serving her best interests. The silence that followed was dangerous. I'd crossed a line, and we both knew it. Liam Crawford moved with predatory grace, circling his desk until he stood directly in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Let me be very clear, Miss Hayes. His voice was soft, deadly. You work for me. You follow my rules. You do not question my parenting decisions, and you absolutely do not psychoanalyze me based on one conversation. If you have concerns about Lyra's care, you bring them to me respectfully and privately. If you ever override my authority or break the rules of this household again, you'll be terminated immediately. Am I understood? I should have backed down, should have apologized and promised compliance. Instead, I stood, bringing us almost nose to nose, and kept my voice steady. I understand you're her father, and you love her. I also understand you're in pain, and you've built rules to manage that pain. But I won't stay silent if I believe something is harming Lyra, even unintentionally. If that's not acceptable to you, tell me now, and I'll leave tonight. For several seconds we stood there, locked in a battle of wills. His eyes were dark with anger, and something else, something that looked almost like respect. Then he stepped back, creating distance, and released a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. Most people are afraid of me. Most people don't have practice standing up to powerful men who think intimidation is the same as leadership. His mouth quirked into an actual smile, brief but genuine. Fair point. He returned to his desk, picked up his drink, and took a slow sip. You can stay, on a trial basis, 1 month. If Lyra continues to respond well to you, and you can follow the household rules, we'll make it permanent. And the December rule? Non-negotiable. Christmas does not enter this house. If you can't accept that, leave now. I thought about Lyra, sorting her blocks with such focus. Lyra, who'd let me read to her. Lyra, who'd waited by the windows for her father to come home. Lyra, who lived in this beautiful prison of rules designed to protect her father's heart more than her own development. I can accept it, I said. For now. I don't recall offering you an option to reconsider later. You didn't. But I'm not agreeing to never reassess what's best for Lyra. If I determine that your rule is causing her harm, I'll tell you. What you do with that information is your choice. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. At least you're honest about your intentions to be a pain in my ass. I prefer to think of it as being an advocate for your daughter. Call it whatever helps you sleep at night, Miss Hayes. He gestured toward the door. You're dismissed. I'll see you at breakfast tomorrow. I'll be working from home this week. I reached the door before his voice stopped me. Charlotte. I turned, surprised he'd used my first name. His expression was unreadable. Thank you. For making her feel safe. I know I seem controlled, but Lyra is everything to me. Everything. If you can give her stability, consistency, someone who understands her, I'll be in your debt. The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the commanding boss or the dangerous man Marcus had hinted at. This was just a father who loved his daughter and had no idea how to show it without suffocating her with rules. I'll take care of her, I promised. But you need to let me do it my way. Trust that I know what I'm doing. Trust doesn't come easily to me. Then it's good I'm patient. I left before he could respond, my heart racing with adrenaline, and something I didn't want to examine too closely. Liam Crawford was dangerous, not just because of whatever business he conducted, but because underneath all that control was a man who cared so deeply he'd built walls around everything to keep from being hurt again. Those walls extended around Lyra too, and my job wasn't just to care for her. It was to help both of them learn that protection didn't have to mean isolation, even if that meant eventually breaking every rule in this carefully controlled house. The first week passed in a rhythm that surprised me with its intensity. Liam Crawford wasn't an absent father. He was an omnipresent one, just in the most controlled way possible. He worked from home, which meant I saw him constantly. During breakfast, where he sat with Lyra in companionable silence while she ate her specific foods, and he read through documents on his tablet. During afternoon outdoor time, when he'd appear in the gardens to watch from a distance, as Lyra and I explored or worked on her physical coordination. During evening routines, when he'd knock softly on her door and spend exactly 15 minutes reading to her from the same 3 books she requested every night. He never pushed for more contact than she offered, never tried to force affection she wasn't ready to give. But he was always there, this quiet, powerful presence orbiting his daughter like a moon around a planet, maintaining perfect distance while exerting constant gravitational pull. And he watched me with the same intensity he watched everything else. I felt his gaze during my morning sessions with Lyra, when we worked on communication using her AAC device and visual supports. Felt it when I redirected her during sensory overload, using the techniques I'd spent years perfecting. Felt it most acutely during the moments when I ignored his rules because Lyra's needs demanded it, like the Tuesday morning when she became fixated on the locked door at the end of the West Wing. We'd been working on gross motor skills in the hallway, practicing balance on a line of tape I'd placed on the floor, when Lyra suddenly stopped and stared at that door. It was larger than the others, solid oak with an old-fashioned lock, and something about it had captured her attention completely. She walked toward it, placed both hands flat against the wood, and began rocking. "That's a closed door, sweetie," I said gently, approaching slowly. "We can't go in there." She pressed harder against it, making a sound low in her throat that I'd learned meant distress. I tried redirection, offered her favorite blocks, suggested we go to her room, pulled out the visual schedule to show what came next. Nothing worked. She stayed pressed against that door, rocking harder, her breathing becoming rapid. A meltdown was building. I could see it in the tension of her small body, in the way her hands had begun to flap, in the sound that was getting louder. "Lyra needs to see inside," I said to the air, knowing Marcus was likely monitoring the hallway through the security system. "Whatever's in there is causing anxiety because she can't reconcile the closed door with her understanding of the house's layout." No response, but I heard footsteps approaching, measured and deliberate. Liam appeared at the end of the hallway, his expression unreadable. He took in the scene. Lyra pressed against the door, me crouched nearby trying to manage an impending crisis, and something flickered across his face. "That room is off limits," he said, his voice tight. "She needs closure. The unknown is overwhelming her. If you just let her see inside for 60 seconds, she can categorize it and move on." "No." Lyra's sound increased in volume, her rocking becoming more violent. She was hitting her head against the door now. Not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to alarm. I made a decision. "Then you explain to your daughter why she can't have the information she needs to feel safe," I said, stepping back. "Because I'm not going to participate in withholding something that would help her just because you're afraid of whatever's behind that door." His eyes went cold. "You're out of line." "Probably, but she's about to completely dysregulate, and it's preventable. Your choice, Mr. Crawford. Your rules or your daughter's well-being." The muscle in his jaw ticked. For a moment, I thought he'd fire me on the spot. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a key, and moved to the door. Lyra immediately stepped back, her rocking slowing, her attention fixed on his hands. 60 seconds, he said to me, his voice strained. "Then we leave." He unlocked the door and pushed it open. The room beyond was beautiful and heartbreaking. A bedroom, clearly a woman's space, decorated in soft whites and creams. Everything was pristine, untouched, frozen in time. A book lay on the nightstand, bookmark still in place. Slippers by the bed, a robe draped over a chair. Photographs on the dresser showing a laughing woman with dark hair and Liam's gray eyes. A woman holding a newborn baby with such joy on her face it made my chest ache. Lyra's mother, preserved exactly as she'd left it 6 years ago. Lyra walked into the room slowly, her eyes tracking over everything with that intense focus she brought to understanding her world. She went to the dresser, studied the photographs for a long moment, then reached out and traced one finger along the frame containing her mother's face. She turned to look at Liam, standing rigid in the doorway, and made a sound. A question, formed not with words but with tone and expression. "That's your mama," Liam said, his voice rough. "Her name was Rachel. She loved you very much." Lyra looked back at the photograph, her expression serious, processing. Then she did something that made my throat tight. She pressed her forehead against the frame, the same gesture of connection she gave her father, acknowledging something important, even if she couldn't fully understand it. After a moment, she straightened, looked around the room one more time with that cataloging gaze, and walked back to the hallway. Crisis averted. Question answered. Order restored. Liam locked the door with hands that shook almost imperceptibly. 60 seconds, I said quietly. That's all she needed. He didn't respond, just turned and walked away, his shoulders rigid with control. That evening, after Lyra was asleep, I found a note slipped under my door. You were right about the door. Thank you for pushing. L. The next morning, Liam was different. Not softer exactly, but less rigid. He asked my opinion during breakfast about adjusting Lyra's schedule. He observed my therapy sessions without hovering. He even smiled briefly when Lyra successfully used her AAC device to request a snack independently. She's progressing, he said during her afternoon nap time, when he'd asked me to his office to review her development plan. More than she did with the previous nanny. She's secure enough to take risks, I explained. The consistency and routine we've established gives her a foundation to try new things. The AAC device, how long before she might use it for more complex communication? It varies. Some nonverbal autistic children develop extensive vocabularies through AAC. Others use it primarily for needs and wants. We'll follow her lead. He nodded, making notes. Then he looked up, his gray eyes assessing. You're good at this. Not just the technical skills. You genuinely care about her. Of course I care about her. She's remarkable. Most people see her diagnosis first. You see her. Most people are idiots. He laughed, a real laugh that transformed his face completely. For just a moment, the controlled, dangerous man disappeared, and I saw someone younger underneath. Someone who might have been happy once, before grief built walls around everything he loved. Charlotte, he said, and the sound of my name in his voice did something strange to my heartbeat. I need to travel next week. 3 days, unavoidable. I want you to understand that I don't leave Lyra lightly. My business requires my presence sometimes, and I've put off this particular trip twice already. She'll be fine. We'll maintain her routine exactly. Marcus will be here. Anything you need, any emergency, he handles it. But I'll have my phone on me at all times. You call for anything. I understand. He studied me for a long moment. Do you? Because most people in your position would be planning to relax while the boss is away. You look like you're preparing for battle. Transitions are hard for autistic children. Your absence will disrupt her sense of security, even if she doesn't show it obviously. I'm just planning ahead. Something warm flickered in his eyes. 3 days. I'll be back Thursday evening. We'll be here. He left Monday morning before Lyra woke up, which I'd argued against, but he'd insisted would be easier. When she came downstairs for breakfast and found his usual seat empty, she stopped in the doorway, her rocking starting immediately. Your dad had to travel for work, I explained, showing her the visual schedule where I'd added pictures representing his absence and return. He'll be gone 3 days. He'll be back Thursday evening. Same as always, just Daddy's not here for breakfast. She studied the schedule, pointed to the picture of Liam with a question in her expression. Work, I confirmed. But he's coming back. See? Thursday. I pointed to the calendar. He'll be home for dinner. She accepted this with a solemnity that broke my heart. Had she learned not to expect him to stay? Had he traveled so much in her young life that his absence felt normal? The first day went smoothly. We maintained routine with precision, and Lyra seemed calm. But that night, when I went to say goodnight, I found her sitting in her window seat, staring out at the dark driveway, waiting. He's not coming tonight, sweetie, I said softly. But he will come back. He always comes back to you. She didn't turn, just kept watching the darkness. I sat beside her, not touching but present, and we waited together until she was ready to sleep. Tuesday was harder. Lyra was dysregulated from the moment she woke up. She refused breakfast, threw her blocks instead of building with them, and had a meltdown when her routine was disrupted by a delivery at the door. I spent most of the day doing damage control, using every calming technique I knew, staying patient and consistent even when I wanted to call Liam and demand he come home. By Tuesday evening, I was exhausted. Lyra had finally settled after an hour-long meltdown, and I'd gotten her through bedtime routine with the help of weighted blankets and her favorite sensory toys. I was in my room, seriously considering pouring myself wine, when my phone rang. Liam's name on the screen made my stomach flip. Hello? Charlotte. Marcus said today was difficult. Is she all right? His voice was tight with concern, and I could hear background noise that suggested he was somewhere public. An airport, maybe, or a busy street. She's struggling with the transition, but she's managing. We had a rough afternoon, but she calmed down and went to bed on schedule. Was she hurt? Did she hurt herself? No. Nothing like that. Just a lot of big feelings about changes to her routine. He was quiet for a moment. I shouldn't have left. She's 6 years old and her primary attachment figure is gone. Of course she's having feelings about it, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't travel when necessary. It means we support her through it. You sound tired. Long day, but I'm fine. Charlotte. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. Thank you for taking care of her, for being patient, for not calling me to fix it even though you could have. That's literally my job. It's more than that. You know it is. I did know. Somewhere over the past 2 weeks, this had stopped being just a job. Lyra had wound herself around my heart with her serious eyes and her careful trust. And Liam, watching everything with that intensity that felt like being seen for the first time in my life, had started to matter in ways that definitely weren't professional. One more day, I said, changing the subject. We can handle one more day. I'll be home Thursday evening, 6 o'clock. Tell her that. Show her the schedule. I will. Charlotte? He paused. I'm glad you're there. I'm glad it's you. He hung up before I could respond, leaving me staring at my phone and wondering what exactly he'd meant by that. Wednesday was better. Lyra seemed to have accepted the temporary change, and we fell back into rhythm. But Wednesday evening, she did something that caught me completely off guard. We were reading before bed, cuddled together on her window seat, when she suddenly reached up and touched my face. Her small hand rested against my cheek for just a moment, a gesture of trust and affection that she'd never offered before. Then she picked up her AAC device and pressed 3 buttons. Safe. Charlotte. Home. I had to blink back tears. I'm safe? Or you feel safe? She pressed another button. Me. Safe. You feel safe with me? She nodded, solemn, and pressed her forehead against my shoulder in that gesture I'd only ever seen her give her father. I held very still, barely breathing, accepting the gift of her trust. I'll always keep you safe, Lyra. I promise. She pulled back, satisfied, and returned to her book as if nothing monumental had just happened. But everything had shifted. She wasn't just tolerating me anymore. She'd claimed me as hers, as someone in her small circle of trusted people, as home. Thursday, Liam Crawford came home at exactly 6 o'clock. Lyra and I were in the living room, working on a puzzle, when we heard his car. She looked up, her whole body going still with attention. Then she stood, walked to the window, and watched as he emerged from the car, briefcase in hand, exhaustion visible in every line of his body. He looked up at the window, saw her watching. and his entire expression transformed with relief and love. Lyra turned and walked toward the door. I followed, sensing something important about to happen. She waited in the foyer as he came through the door, patient and still. When he saw her, he set down his briefcase and crouched to her level. "Hi, little love. I missed you." She studied him for a moment, assessing. Then she did something I'd never seen before. She walked straight into his arms and let him hold her. Not just the forehead touch, not just 3 seconds of contact. An actual hug, her small arms wrapping around his neck, her head tucked under his chin, holding on with purpose. Liam's eyes closed, his arms coming around her with such careful tenderness it made my chest ache. He held her like she was made of glass and gold, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, like he'd been waiting 6 years for this moment, and couldn't quite believe it was real. When she finally pulled back, he didn't try to prolong it. Just let her go, his hands trembling slightly. "Thank you," he whispered to her. "Thank you for that." She nodded, serious, then turned and came back to me. She took my hand, something else she'd never done before, and tugged me forward. I let her lead me to where Liam still crouched in the foyer. She took his hand with her other hand, connecting us, and pressed a button on her AAC device she'd brought with her. Family. The word hung in the air between us. Liam's eyes met mine over Lyra's head, and something passed between us. Understanding. Recognition. A shift in the foundation of whatever this arrangement was. "Yeah, little love," he said softly, his voice rough. "Family." And standing there in that perfect foyer of that controlled house, holding hands with a 6-year-old girl and her dangerous, broken father, I realized I'd stopped thinking about this as a job weeks ago. Somewhere along the way, they'd both become mine too. The shift in our dynamic was subtle but undeniable. Liam started coming home earlier, started taking lunch in the main dining room instead of his office, so he could see Lyra during her midday meal. Started asking my opinion not just about her therapy, but about household decisions, security arrangements, even business travel that might affect her routine, and he watched me. Constantly. With an intensity that made my skin warm and my pulse quicken in ways that were absolutely inappropriate for an employee. 2 weeks after his trip, everything changed. It started with Marcus appearing at breakfast with a tablet, and an expression I'd learned meant trouble. "We have a situation," he said quietly to Liam, angling the screen so Lyra couldn't see. Liam's face went carefully blank as he read, but I saw his knuckles whiten where he gripped his coffee cup. "When was this published?" 2 hours ago. It's already trending." "What is it?" I asked, concerned by the sudden tension. Liam looked at me, something dark and dangerous in his gray eyes. "Nothing that concerns you. Marcus, handle it through the usual channels." But that evening, after Lyra was asleep, he appeared at my door. It was nearly 10, late for him to be seeking me out, and he looked exhausted. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, suddenly aware I was wearing sleep shorts and an oversized t-shirt, my hair down for the first time since he'd met me. His eyes tracked over me briefly before he deliberately looked away, moving to the window. "There's been a development in my business," he said, his voice tight. "Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous, but visible. A rival is pushing back against some territory acquisitions, and they've decided to make it personal. They're spreading rumors, trying to damage my reputation with business partners." "What does that have to do with me?" He turned, and the look on his face made my breath catch. "They know about you living here, caring for Lyra. They're suggesting inappropriate behavior, questioning why I'd hire a young, attractive woman to live in my home. They're trying to paint me as unstable, compromised by personal interests. That's ridiculous. I'm Lyra's caregiver. You're a 28-year-old woman living alone with a widowed man. In their narrative, It looks suspicious. Heat flooded my face. So what do we do? Do I need to leave? No. The word came out fierce, almost aggressive. You're not leaving. Lyra needs you. She's made more progress in a month than she did in the previous year. You're not going anywhere because some rival wants to play games. Then what? He moved closer, and I caught his scent, something expensive and masculine that made my thoughts scatter. My PR team has a suggestion. It's unconventional, and I'll understand if you refuse, but I'm asking you to consider it. What kind of suggestion? That we present ourselves as a couple, not to the world at large, but to my business associates and allies. Let them think there's a romantic relationship developing. It neutralizes the scandal, explains your presence, and actually strengthens my position by showing stability. I stared at him. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? I want you to pretend to be someone I'm courting, someone important to both me and Lyra, someone who belongs in this house as more than just an employee. For how long? Until the rival situation resolves. A few months, maybe less. My mind raced through implications. What would that actually entail? Attending some business dinners with me? Being seen together publicly? Perhaps adjusting your living situation to appear more integrated into the family? He paused. I'd compensate you significantly for the additional responsibility. I don't want money for this. Then what do you want? The question hung between us, loaded with implications neither of us was ready to examine. Autonomy in Lyra's care, I said finally. Complete authority over her therapy decisions, her schedule, her development plan. You get input and veto power on major choices, but day to day, I decide what's best for her. Something flickered in his eyes. Done. What else? Truth. If we're going to pretend something in public, I need honesty in private. No more locked rooms, no more secrets that affect Lyra. If there's danger, if your business might impact her, I need to know. His jaw tightened. My business is complicated. I gathered that from the armed security and the way people look at you like you could end them with a phone call. I'm not asking for details. I'm asking for transparency about anything that affects her safety or well-being. He studied me for a long moment. You're either very brave or very naive about what you're asking to be part of. Maybe both. Is that a yes? It's a yes. He extended his hand. Do we have an agreement? I looked at his offered hand, strong and scarred in ways that suggested violence, and knew I was making a choice that would change everything. But Lyra's progress mattered more than my comfort, and if pretending to be Liam Crawford's romantic interest kept her stable and safe, I'd do it. I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and firm, and electricity shot up my arm. There's one more thing, he said, not releasing my hand. If we're going to sell this convincingly, people need to believe there's genuine attraction between us. So we'll act attracted. Charlotte. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. I don't think acting will be the problem. My breath caught at the implication in his words, in his eyes, in the way his thumb brushed across my knuckles. This is complicated, I whispered. Everything about my life is complicated. He stepped closer, still holding my hand, his free hand coming up to brush a strand of hair behind my ear. But for what it's worth, I don't think I'll have to pretend very hard. You're beautiful, intelligent, and you care about my daughter like she's yours. Any man would be fortunate to actually be with you. Liam. His name came out breathless. We shouldn't. I know. But he didn't move away. This is an arrangement, a strategic necessity. Nothing more. Right. Nothing more. We stood there, inches apart, his hand still tangled in my hair, mine still caught in his, both of us lying through our teeth. The first public appearance happened 3 days later. Liam took me to an upscale restaurant where he was meeting with business associates. He'd sent a stylist to the house that afternoon, a cheerful woman named Diane, who'd transformed me with expert efficiency. My hair was styled in loose waves, my makeup subtle but polished, and the dress, God, the dress. Navy blue, fitted but elegant, hitting just above the knee with a neckline that was modest but flattering. I felt like someone else looking in the mirror, someone who belonged in Liam Crawford's world. "You look beautiful," he'd said when I came downstairs, and something in his voice made it clear he wasn't just saying it for show. At the restaurant, he played the role perfectly, his hand at the small of my back as we entered. His attention focused on me even when others spoke, the way he introduced me to his associates, not as Lyra's nanny but as Charlotte, with a warmth in his voice that suggested intimacy. "How did you two meet?" one man asked, curiosity obvious. "She came to help Lyra," Liam said smoothly, his hand finding mine under the table, "and stayed for both of us." The lie felt too close to truth. Throughout dinner, I felt his attention like a physical touch. The way he anticipated my needs, refilling my water, steering conversation when I seemed uncomfortable, his thumb drawing circles on my palm when he thought no one was watching. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. On the drive home, with the city lights blurring past, I finally spoke. "You're very good at this." "At what?" "Making it seem real." He glanced at me, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Maybe that's because it doesn't feel like pretending anymore." My heart stuttered. "Liam." "I know. It's complicated. It's inappropriate. You work for me. You care for my daughter. There are 1,000 reasons why this is a terrible idea." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "But somewhere between you standing up to me in my office and you sitting beside Lyra during her meltdowns and you pushing me to face things I've been avoiding for 6 years, I started wanting this to be real. We barely know each other. I know you see my daughter. I know you're not afraid of me. I know you make me want to be better than I am. That's more than I've known about anyone in 6 years." We pulled up to the house, and he turned off the engine but didn't move to get out. "Charlotte, I'm not asking for anything tonight. I'm just being honest because you demanded honesty. Whatever this arrangement is, whatever we're pretending, I need you to know that for me, it stopped being pretend the moment you held Lyra through that first meltdown and looked at me like I was failing her by staying distant. You love her so much it terrifies you," I said quietly. "That's not failure. That's just being a parent. Then help me be better at it. Help me learn how to love her without being afraid all the time. And maybe, if I'm very lucky, teach me how to feel something other than grief again." The vulnerability in his voice undid me completely. "Liam, if we do this, if we let this become real, everything changes. I know. Lyra has to come first. Always. No matter what. I wouldn't have it any other way. And I'm still going to break your rules when they don't serve her." He laughed softly. "I'm counting on it." I reached across the console and took his hand, lacing our fingers together. "Then let's see where this goes. Slowly, carefully, with Lyra's needs as the priority." "Agreed." He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that sent heat flooding through me. "Thank you, Charlotte, for everything." As we walked into the house together, his hand warm in mine, I realized I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Whatever happened next, I was no longer just Lyra's caregiver. I was part of this complicated, broken, beautiful family. And I had no idea how to protect my heart from what was coming. The autumn deepened into early winter, and our carefully constructed arrangement evolved into something I couldn't quite name, but couldn't deny. Liam and I fell into a rhythm that felt dangerously domestic. Mornings where he'd find excuses to linger in the kitchen while I made Lyra's breakfast, his hand brushing mine as he reached for coffee, his eyes warm with something that definitely wasn't pretend. Evenings where we'd sit together after Lyra was asleep, talking about everything and nothing, his guard slowly lowering to reveal the man beneath the armor. He told me about Rachel, how they'd met young, married fast, built a life that felt invincible until it wasn't. How holding Lyra for the first time while Rachel slipped away had shattered something in him he wasn't sure could be repaired. I was angry at her, he admitted one night, whiskey in hand, firelight casting shadows across his face. For leaving me, for dying when I needed her, for making me raise our daughter alone. How's that for terrible? That's called grief, I said softly, and it's human. I don't feel human most of the time. I feel like I'm performing humanity while something cold operates underneath. You're not cold with Lyra, because she's the only thing that still feels real. He looked at me then, something vulnerable in his gray eyes. Until you. These conversations terrified me with their intimacy, but they also made me understand him in ways I hadn't expected. Liam Crawford wasn't cruel or distant by nature. He was a man who'd loved so completely that losing it had taught him to control everything else to survive, including Christmas. As December approached, I noticed the changes in household routine. Marcus removed all catalogs and magazines that featured holiday content. The radio stations were switched to ones that didn't play seasonal music. Even Lyra's iPad had parental controls updated to filter out Christmas-related content. "This is extreme," I said to Liam one evening after finding him instructing the staff to refuse all holiday delivery packages. "She's 6 years old. She goes to therapy appointments outside this house. She sees decorations everywhere. You can't control the entire world." "I can control her environment," he replied, his voice tight. "Here, she's safe from the chaos. Or you're safe from the memories." His expression hardened. "We had an agreement, Charlotte. You'd respect the household rules." I said I'd assess whether they harm Lyra, and I'm telling you now, this level of control isn't about her sensory needs. It's about your trauma. This conversation is over. He walked away, and I let him, because pushing when he was already brittle would only make things worse. But I also started planning, because Lyra deserved better than inheriting her father's grief. 2 days later, everything exploded. I was in the gardens with Lyra during her outdoor time, working on gross motor skills by having her walk along the low stone wall, when 3 black SUVs pulled up the drive at speed. Not Liam's usual cars, not Marcus's security team. Something else. "Lyra, we're going inside now," I said, keeping my voice calm while my heart raced. "Fast walk, not running. Can you do that?" She sensed my tension, her eyes going wide, but she took my hand and moved quickly beside me. We'd barely reached the terrace when Marcus appeared, his face grim. "Miss Hayes, take Lyra to her safe room. Now. Don't come out until I personally come get you." Safe room. I hadn't known there was a safe room. "What's happening?" "Now, Charlotte." The use of my first name told me everything. This was serious. He led us quickly through the house to what I'd thought was a linen closet on the 2nd floor. Inside, hidden behind a false wall, was a reinforced door with a biometric lock. He pressed his palm to it, and it opened to reveal a small room equipped with supplies, communication equipment, and a security monitor showing multiple camera angles. "Stay here. Door locks automatically. Only Liam, myself, or building security can open it. You have water, food, bathroom through that door. If anything happens, there's a phone that connects directly to emergency services. Marcus, what's happening?" "The Volkov family. Liam's been negotiating territory disputes with them for months. They've decided to accelerate matters." His expression softened briefly as he looked at Lyra, who was pressing herself against my side. "Keep her calm. This will be over soon." The door sealed behind him with a heavy thunk, and I heard locks engaging. Lyra immediately began rocking, her hands moving in distress. The change in environment, the tension, the sudden movement, all of it was overwhelming her system. "Hey, it's okay," I said, guiding her to the floor. "We're safe here. This is like a special fort. See?" I pointed to the security monitors. "We can see everything outside, but no one can get to us." She wasn't convinced, her rocking increasing, her breathing becoming rapid. I pulled her into my lap, something she usually didn't tolerate, but she pressed against me, needing the pressure. I wrapped my arms around her, applying firm, consistent pressure the way I'd learned helped during high anxiety. "We're going to breathe together," I said softly. "In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Follow my chest. Feel it rise and fall." I breathed slowly, exaggeratedly, and felt her small body gradually sink with mine. Her rocking slowed. Her hands stilled against my arms. On the monitors, I watched armed men emerging from the SUVs, watched Marcus and Liam's security team form a perimeter, watched Liam himself stride out the front door, his bearing radiating danger even through the grainy camera feed. There was a conversation I couldn't hear, gestures that looked aggressive, and then, with shocking speed, violence. I turned Lyra's face into my shoulder so she couldn't see as her father moved with lethal precision, disarming one man, striking another. His security team engaged simultaneously, and within minutes, the intruders were subdued, forced to their knees. Liam stood over them, and even through the camera, I could see the cold fury radiating from him. This was the man people feared, the one who controlled territories through strategic violence and calculated intimidation. This was the reality of who I'd agreed to build a life with. The whole thing lasted maybe 10 minutes. Police arrived, clearly already informed. The intruders were taken away. Liam spoke briefly with an officer, then turned and strode back toward the house. 20 minutes later, the door to our safe room opened. Liam stood there, his shirt torn, blood on his knuckles, his face still hard with adrenaline. But when he saw Lyra pressed against me, his expression crumbled. "Is she all right?" His voice was rough. "Charlotte, is she hurt?" "She's fine. Scared, but fine." He sagged against the doorframe. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. This should never have reached the house. They should never have gotten this close." Lyra lifted her head from my shoulder, saw her father, and made a distressed sound. "Your hands are bleeding," I said, noting the split knuckles. "Let me see." "I'm fine. I need to make sure you're both okay first." "We're okay, but you need first aid." I stood, still holding Lyra's hand, and approached him. Up close, I could see the barely controlled emotion in his eyes. Fear, guilt, rage, all fighting for dominance. "Come on," I said gently. "Let's get you cleaned up." I led them both to Lyra's bathroom, made her sit on the closed toilet, and cleaned Liam's hands while she watched with solemn attention. The cuts weren't deep, just bloodied, and I worked efficiently to clean and bandage them. "I should have anticipated this," he said quietly. "The Volkovs have been pushing boundaries for weeks. I thought I had more time before they'd make a direct move. Is it over now?" "For now. They've been arrested. The evidence we've provided to law enforcement will keep them occupied for months. But Charlotte..." He looked at me, his gray eyes dark with something I couldn't quite read. "This is my life. This is the danger that comes with who I am and what I do. Today was relatively contained, but it won't always be. If you want to leave, if this is too much, I'll understand. I'll make sure you're protected, set up somewhere safe, compensated for everything you've..." I pressed my fingers to his lips, stopping the words. I'm not leaving. Neither is Lyra. We're a family, remember? And families don't run when things get hard. You could have been hurt. But I wasn't. Your security protocols worked exactly as designed. We were safe. This time. I cupped his face with one hand, forcing him to meet my eyes. Liam Crawford, I knew who you were when I agreed to this arrangement. Maybe not all the details, but I knew you were dangerous. I knew your world operated by different rules. And I chose to stay anyway. For Lyra, and for you. Something broke in his expression. His hand came up to cover mine, pressing it against his cheek. I don't deserve you. Good thing I'm not asking for your permission. Lyra made a soft sound, and we both turned to find her holding out her AAC device. She pressed 3 buttons. Safe, family, home. Liam's breath caught. Yeah, little love, we're safe. We're family. We're home. She stood, walked to both of us, and pressed her forehead first against my shoulder, then against Liam's chest. Her gesture of trust offered to both of us equally. Something shifted in that moment. Whatever lines had existed between employer and employee, between arrangement and reality, between pretending and truth, they dissolved completely. I love you, Liam said quietly, and it took me a moment to realize he was speaking to me, not just Lyra. I didn't mean to. I tried not to. But Charlotte, I love you. And not because you're good with my daughter or because you see past my reputation or because you break my rules. I love you because you make me want to be the man you already see when you look at me. Liam. My voice broke on his name. You don't have to say it back. I know this is complicated and fast and probably a terrible idea. But after today, after watching those men get close to the 2 people who matter most, I can't keep pretending this is just an arrangement anymore. I looked at Lyra, who was watching us with her serious gray eyes, processing something she might not fully understand but clearly sensed was important. Then I looked at Liam, this dangerous, broken, beautiful man who'd let me into his carefully controlled world and taught me that protection and love weren't opposing forces. I love you too, I whispered. I didn't plan to. I definitely didn't want to. But I do. He pulled me into his arms, carefully, with Lyra still between us, and for the first time since I'd entered this house, I felt like we were exactly where we belonged. Dangerous world or not, impossible complications aside, this was real, and I wasn't running. 3 weeks after the Volkov incident, December arrived with the same oppressive silence it always brought to the Crawford house. But this year, something was different. This year, Lyra had vocabulary. She'd been making tremendous progress with her AAC device, building sentences, expressing preferences, asking questions. And 2 days into December, she asked the question I'd been dreading. We were at her therapy appointment when she saw decorations in the waiting room. A small tree, white lights, nothing excessive. She stared at it with that intense focus she brought to new things, then picked up her device. What? That. That's a Christmas tree, her therapist explained gently. Some people decorate them for the holidays. Why? It's a tradition, a way to celebrate Christmas. Lyra processed this, her expression thoughtful. Then she turned to me. Home. Tree. Want. My heart sank. We don't have Christmas decorations at home, sweetie. Why? How did I explain grief to a 6-year-old? How did I tell her that her father's pain had become her deprivation? That's a question for your dad, I said carefully. When we got home, Lyra went directly to Liam's office, something she never did, and knocked on his door with purpose. I followed, knowing this conversation was inevitable but dreading it nonetheless. Liam opened the door, surprised to see her standing there with her device. Hey, little love, What's going on? She held up her tablet, showing him what she'd typed. Want. Christmas. Tree. Home. His face went carefully blank. Lyra, we've talked about this. We don't do Christmas in our house. She shook her head firmly and typed again. Not talked. You decided. Want tree. Want lights. Want Christmas. Something in my chest cracked at her determination. She was advocating for herself, expressing desires, pushing back against his control. It was beautiful and heartbreaking. Baby, Christmas is too much. Too many lights, too much noise, too much chaos. It wouldn't be good for you. She typed rapidly, her small fingers sure on the screen. Other places. Have lights. Have music. Not scared. Want home. Have Christmas. Too. Lyra. Not. Fair. The two words hung in the air like an accusation. Liam looked stricken, his control cracking. He glanced at me, something desperate in his eyes. I stepped forward, kneeling beside Lyra. Your dad is trying to protect you. Sometimes grown-ups make rules because they're scared, not because the rules are actually best for everyone. Charlotte. Liam's voice held a warning. She deserves honesty, Liam. She's 6, not stupid. She can handle truth. I looked at Lyra, choosing my words carefully. Your dad doesn't like Christmas because something very sad happened on Christmas. Your mama died on Christmas Eve, right when you were born. And it hurt him so much that Christmas stopped feeling good, so he made a rule that we don't celebrate it anymore. Lyra absorbed this, her expression serious. Then she typed, Mama. Died. Sad. But alive. That. Good. Liam made a sound like he'd been punched. You're right, I said softly to Lyra. You being alive is good. That's worth celebrating, isn't it? She nodded firmly, then turned to her father and typed again. Love, you, want, you, happy, want, Christmas, make, happy, baby. Christmas doesn't make me happy, Liam said, his voice rough. It reminds me of losing your mama. Lyra thought about this, then typed with careful deliberation. Mama, want, you, happy. Mama, want, me, happy, Christmas. Both. I watched Liam's face crumble as his daughter, with the brutal honesty only children possess, pointed out the truth he'd been avoiding for 6 years. Rachel would have wanted both of them to be happy. She wouldn't have wanted her death to steal joy from their lives forever. I don't know how to do Christmas without her, he whispered. Lyra put down her device and took his hand, pressing her forehead against his chest in her gesture of love and trust. Then she reached for my hand and placed it over her father's. Family. She typed with her free hand. Do. Together. That night, after Lyra was asleep, I found Liam standing in front of that locked door at the end of the west wing. Rachel's room. The shrine he'd maintained for 6 years. I've been coming here every Christmas Eve, he said without turning. Standing outside this door, remembering. Punishing myself for being the one who survived. I moved to stand beside him. Grief isn't something you get over, Liam. It's something you learn to carry differently. I don't know how to let go. Who said anything about letting go? I took his hand. Rachel is part of your story, part of Lyra's story. She always will be. But that doesn't mean the story has to stop with her death. She gave you the most precious gift before she died. She gave you Lyra, and Lyra deserves a father who can teach her that joy and grief can coexist. He was quiet for a long time. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out the key, and opened the door. We stood in the doorway together, looking at the preserved room. Help me, he said quietly. Help me figure out how to do this without betraying her memory. You're not betraying anything by moving forward. You're honoring the life she wanted for your daughter. He turned to me, cupping my face with both hands. I love you, Charlotte Hayes, and I think Rachel would have loved you too. You're teaching me how to be human again. How to feel something other than control and grief. I love you too. Both of you. This complicated, intense, beautiful family. He kissed me then, soft and deep, a promise and a beginning. The next morning I made a decision. While Liam was in a video meeting and Lyra was doing her independent sensory play, I went to the attic. Every house this old had an attic, and I'd asked Marcus weeks ago where the Crawford family stored things. I found them in labeled boxes, preserved with care. Christmas decorations, carefully packed away 6 years ago and never touched since. Lights, ornaments, a tree stand, everything needed to celebrate. I brought down one box, just one. The smallest tree, battery-operated lights, a handful of soft ornaments that wouldn't cause sensory issues. I set it up in Lyra's room while she napped. A tiny tree on her dresser, lights programmed to glow softly without blinking. 3 ornaments she could touch and move if she wanted. When she woke and saw it, her entire face transformed with joy. She ran to it, touched the lights gently, rearranged the ornaments with precise care, and then turned to me with the biggest smile I'd ever seen from her. She grabbed her device. Thank you, best thing ever. You're welcome, sweetie. But you should know your dad might not be happy about this. She shook her head firmly and typed, Dad will understand. Dad loves me. Her faith in him was absolute. When Liam came to say goodnight, he stopped in the doorway, frozen, staring at the small tree glowing softly in the corner. Charlotte. My name was barely a whisper. Lyra ran to him, took his hand, and pulled him toward the tree. She pointed to each ornament, showing him with such pride, such joy, that he couldn't look away. Then she picked up her device. Pretty. Right. Dad. He crouched down to her level, his eyes suspiciously bright. Yeah, little love. It's very pretty. Safe. Lights. Not. Scary. Good. It's good, he agreed, his voice breaking. She wrapped her arms around his neck, hugging him tightly, and whispered against his ear in a voice I'd never heard her use before. Rough from disuse, but determined. Love you, Daddy. Liam's breath caught. His arms came around her, holding her like she was his entire world, tears streaming down his face. I love you too, baby. So much. So incredibly much. He looked at me over Lyra's head, his expression a mixture of grief and healing and gratitude. Thank you, he mouthed. 3 days before Christmas, Liam made a decision. He opened Rachel's room, really opened it, and invited me inside. Together we went through her things, keeping what mattered, releasing what didn't, transforming the shrine into a memory box that Lyra could access when she was older. We found photo albums, journal entries, videos Rachel had made during her pregnancy. Her voice, her laugh, her love for the baby she'd never get to raise. She'd be so proud of Lyra, Liam said, watching footage of Rachel talking to her belly. Look what we made, she keeps saying. Look at this miracle. She'd be proud of you, too, for learning how to move forward. On Christmas Eve, something remarkable happened. I woke to find Liam gone from our bed. We'd been sharing a bed for 2 weeks now, and followed sounds to the main living room. He was there with Marcus, assembling a larger tree. Not massive, not overwhelming, but real, beautiful, thoughtful. You're decorating, I said, stunned. We're decorating, he corrected. As a family. If this is going to be our first Christmas together, it should be special. We spent the morning making the house gently festive. Soft lights, minimal decorations, everything chosen with Lyra's sensory needs in mind. But present, acknowledged, celebrated. When Lyra came downstairs and saw the tree in the living room, lit up with warm white lights, she stopped and stared. Then she started crying. Not distress tears, joy tears. She ran to the tree, touched it reverently, and then ran back to both of us, hugging us together with her small arms. "Best Christmas ever," she typed. "Best family ever." That evening, after Lyra was asleep, Liam and I sat by the tree, his arm around me, both of us exhausted and happy. 6 years, he said quietly. 6 years of thinking I could control grief by controlling everything else. And my daughter, with her brutal honesty and her communication device, taught me that the only thing I was really controlling was the possibility of joy. She's remarkable. Like her mother, like you. He turned to me, something vulnerable in his expression. "Charlotte, I know this has all happened fast. I know we've only known each other a few months. But I can't imagine my life without you anymore. You're not just Lyra's caregiver. You're my partner, my conscience, my heart. Marry me. Liam." I'm not asking for an answer tonight. I'm just asking you to think about it. About making this permanent. About being Lyra's mother officially, not just practically. About building a life together that honors the past, but doesn't live in it. I looked at the tree, at the lights reflecting in his gray eyes, at the peace on his face that had been absent when I'd first arrived. "Ask me again in the morning," I said softly. "When we've both had time to be sure." "I'm already sure." "Then you can afford to wait 12 hours. He laughed and pulled me closer. "You're going to make me work for this, aren't you? Every single day for the rest of our lives." "Good. I wouldn't want it any other way." Christmas morning dawned clear and cold. Lyra woke us at 6, bouncing on our bed, her device already in hand. Christmas, presents, family, best day. We'd prepared simple gifts, sensory toys, weighted blankets, books, new blocks. Nothing excessive, everything chosen with love. But it was the last gift that made everything perfect. Liam handed Lyra a small frame containing 3 photos. Rachel holding newborn Lyra, Liam and Charlotte with 6-year-old Lyra, and a candid shot from yesterday of all 3 of us decorating the tree together. Past, present, future. He'd written on the back. Lyra studied it for a long time, her finger tracing each face. Then she typed carefully, "Mama, Charlotte, both, love, me, both, my family." "That's right, baby," Liam said, his voice thick. "You have 2 mothers who love you. One in heaven, one here on earth. Both part of our family." She nodded solemnly, satisfied, then turned to me. "Stay. Forever." "I'm not going anywhere, sweetie." She looked at her father expectantly. Liam took a breath, pulled a small box from his pocket, and opened it to reveal a simple, beautiful ring. "Charlotte Hayes, will you marry me? Will you be Lyra's mother officially? Will you help me build a family that celebrates joy even when we carry grief? Will you break my rules when they need breaking, and stand beside me when things get dangerous, and love us with the fierce, protective, challenging love you've shown every single day since you walked into our lives?" Lyra was watching me with such hope, such certainty, that I couldn't have said no even if I'd wanted to. "Yes," I said, laughing through tears. "Yes to all of it." Lyra cheered, actual vocal sound, jumping up and down with excitement while Liam slipped the ring on my finger and kissed me like I was air and he'd been drowning. Later, after breakfast and presents and watching Christmas movies with the volume low, I found Liam standing by the window, looking out at the snow-covered grounds. "What are you thinking?" I asked, slipping my arms around him from behind. That Christmas used to mean death and grief. Now it means family and second chances. He turned in my arms, his hands framing my face. "You didn't just break my rules, Charlotte. You broke my walls. You taught me that protecting the people I love doesn't mean isolating them from the world. It means giving them roots strong enough to weather anything. You did that yourself. I just pushed you to see it." You did more than push. You loved me when I didn't know how to love myself. You saw Lyra when everyone else saw a diagnosis. You took a house full of rules and control and made it a home. From the living room, we heard Lyra's delighted laugh as she arranged her new blocks near the Christmas tree, creating patterns that incorporated the twinkling lights. "That sound," Liam said quietly. "That's what I thought I'd lost forever. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Thank you for giving it back to us." We gave it to each other. That's what family does. He pulled me close, and we stood there, watching our daughter play while snow fell softly outside. The first Christmas in 6 years that felt like a beginning instead of an ending. The rules were broken. The walls were down. And the Mafia boss who thought he'd never smile again was learning that the bravest thing he could do wasn't control everything around him. It was letting go and trusting that love could protect what control never could. And it all started with a woman who broke the rules, a little girl who demanded joy, and a Christmas that proved healing was possible when you chose hope over fear. Our family wasn't conventional. Our home wasn't typical. Our love story wasn't simple. But it was ours, built on broken rules and mended hearts, and that made it perfect.